Hi, this is Roger. Thanks for dropping by. All of my watering ought to have got done yesterday, and I just had one of those days where I looked at it, walked away. I looked at it, and I walked away, and I did nothing. I think it's just the car is getting me down. It really is. But nonetheless, it can only do that so often without things suffering. So today I've taken a deep breath and thought, right, everything's going to get done that needs doing in one day. And then if I get a bit miffed with the car or anything else that's going on, I don't need to worry for a few days. So that's my idea today. The sun's out, that always brightens me up. And sometime today I'm going to drop that netting down. It suddenly dawned on me that the shortest day is in about 4 weeks' time, which means either side of that point is a month. Yeah, so I wanted that bright light in those shortest days for the resting dendrobiums. So now might be a good time to start it. So I'm going to do that in a minute. No need to film that. I'll film the result, i.e. the brighter light. But what I wanted to start with today was this got filmed at that angle and from a distance, and I did say that these look like they're starting to swell. Now this is a delicatum, Dendrobium delicatum. It was just a single cane kiki, so I'm not expecting much from it. But it just shows how easily you can get sidetracked. I was concentrating on this so much, I missed that completely. It's got a spike starting. Now this cane was in bloom when I got it. That's the old cane there. But these types of dendrobiums can bloom 3, 4, 5 times from a single cane. Initially, the normal way is that the first cane comes out the top. Well, this one didn't actually. It came out from just below the top leaf. But that definitely looks like a spike to me. That is probably one of the most fragrant orchids around. It's stunning. So looking forward to that. I'll do that in a minute, but my come on, Rhynchostylis gigantea, the blooms are just starting to crack open, but I need to be busy today, so I'm going to do this in short snaps. As I said, I thought I'd start with that dendrobium because I wasn't expecting that to bloom until at least the next new growth. And strangely enough, it's not looking as though it's going to bloom on the latest. Oh, it flipping well is, you know. There's a spike down in there too. Woohoo! White flowers, Kingianum style look-alike, looky-likey, whatever you want to call it. And the spike it had when I got it, I think I had 5 or 6 blooms on it. They're not large, and they are virtually white, but Kingianum shaped dendrobium blooms. But the fragrance is stunning. There was a guy who had a, I mean, he actually got a first for it at our spring show this year, which is its normal time for blooming, February, March, and it, you know, massive specimen sized plant, fair enough, it probably had 50 canes on it, you know, but it was blooming on all of the top of the plant. You know, it was blooming from older parts, the newer parts, it was just a mass of blooms. Now our show is in a big hall, and it's a tall hall. There's a large volume of air in there, and as soon as you walked in the door, you were affected by the fragrance from that one plant. Literally, as you walked in that huge hall, you thought, cool, that lady's got strong perfume on. Or, you know, thoughts along those lines. What on earth is that fragrance? And it had a strange effect because it moved around the hall, making it, on occasions, quite difficult to actually get to the plant that was doing it. But the guy whose plant it was, proud as punch he was, he came up to me and he said, "Make sure you video my delicatum, won't you?" I said, "Well, I'm hoping to get everybody in." He said, "No, no, no. It's special this year. It's never bloomed like this before. Make sure you get it." So obviously I did. But yeah, it looks like we're going to have blooms on this. As I say, the fragrance on that is incredibly powerful for such small blooms. In the Kingianum range, they're all fragrant, basically, to one degree or another. The actual species Kingianum is not that easy to get hold of in the UK because there's so many hybrids around, and it's almost impossible to tell that you've actually got the original species. And it's mildly fragrant. The berry odour cross is quite fragrant, but this one is way above any of them. Absolutely way above the lot. Really powerful. Quite looking forward to that. While I've got these two rescue cats out, this new growth on here is now pushing out a good set of roots. It's not in the right place, but I'm reluctant to disturb it. Those roots will get down into the pot. That new growth is sticking up in the air, tough. I'm not disturbing it. The new growth on this one's pushing on. Given that this new growth is pushing roots now, I'm surprised this one isn't. But maybe these original roots that it started a while ago are the ones that go with that new growth rather than back on the rhizome. In fact, yes, they probably are. So we've got roots on both of these rescue bits, so hopefully they're going to make it. Should be okay. Coming on. Let's see what else I've got. This little thing was nearly thrown out earlier in the year. Got very, very close. It's a Coelogene, and it used to be called Orchid, now it's called Nitida. And quite honestly, that was the plant. And some of the leaves were starting to get a bit manky. It was showing no signs of growth, and I'd had it quite some time sitting there doing nothing. But then it grew a new growth. Nice leaf, nice size. Now it's doing that. Now it's highly unlikely on a plant that size that's going to be a spike. It's going to be another new growth. And it'll be a winter growth, so it may not get as large as this. But at least it's growing now. I mean, I've got a feeling this needs to get probably twice that size before it thinks about blooming. But anyway, there's signs of life. This is good. Now this Coelogene was on death row for a year. Literally. It was a linear pseudo bulb basically with no signs of life, and it sat like that for a year and did nothing. It was on a mount with a lot of moss, so the fact that it was on a mount didn't really matter. It was in moss. But it showed a little sign of life, so basically I cut the plant in half so that I could get the two halves in a pot. And this is Coelogene flaccida. And basically both the halves grew nice new bulbs. But what I have just noticed, as I've got it down to water it, that while I wasn't looking, it's actually filled the pot with roots. Now it didn't have roots. Well, it flipping well has now. I reckon they grew overnight when I wasn't looking. They've probably been there a while, and I just haven't really looked at it closely. I mean, there's no signs of new growths at the moment, but I'm happy that it's got the two nice new ones. You know, there's a lot of leafless bulbs on here. There's that one old leaf left and the two leaves on each of the new growths. So it hasn't got a lot of leaf power at the top of the plant. So without a decent root system, it's not going to feed itself very well. But that's pushed on really quickly. Quite surprised. Now, with a root system and a couple of new growths with leaves, it should take off next year. Or whenever its growing season is. Some Coelogenes grow quite well in the winter. But, we'll wait and see, but you know, it's not dead yet. It's progressed, and it's now got a good root system. So we should see something from that next year. There comes a time when I've just had enough. This plant was never very good. When I got it, it was poor. It had virtually no roots. I mounted it, and it's never grown. And I mean, these canes have had it. There's no life left in these. There's no signs of growth. There's no signs of new roots. That's what it looked like when it went into the winter rest last year. And it's had a year, basically. It's had a growing season and done absolutely nothing. And luckily, its only signs of life in the spring were a couple of little kikis. They happen to be growing on quite well. So this is a Dendrobium anosmum, but it's the semi-alba form. And in my experience, the semi-albas and the alba forms of species have never got the same vigour as the proper thing, if you know what I mean. So it's never been a strong plant, but those two kikis, They've produced some roots and they are growing. So I'll just keep those ticking over during the winter, and then come the spring they can be mounted, and hopefully they will produce new growths at the base and get some decent canes going during next year's growing season. Because if they don't, I'll have lost the plant, which is a shame. I'll do a pop-up of the blooms. They are nice, very fragrant, and it's only ever bloomed once for me, and that was not long after I got it. So I can't profess to have created those blooms. They were probably there, you know, waiting to go when I got it. But yeah, there just comes a time. It's lifeless. It's just, there's nothing on it worth saving. And as I said, if in a complete growing season there's no sign of life, chances are it's dead. And it produced those kikis probably as an absolute last resort, using the little bit of stored energy there may have been in the canes, and just managed to produce the kikis. And I think if the kikis had stayed there much longer, they'd have died too. So luckily it's sort of saved. But yeah, that's a bad news and a good news, I suppose. Don't want to lose the plant, you know, but luckily I've got two kikis that are growing. Now they'll slow right down for the winter, obviously, but I'll keep them ticking over, and then we'll go see what we can do in the spring at getting a new plant going on the mount. Okay, so Rhynchostylis gigantea, the blooms are just starting to crack. Now obviously this will get filmed again when the spike's fully open, probably about a week. But they're opening in a strange sequence, because on these type of spikes normally they start opening from there and work towards the tip, whereas the two that are cracking open at the moment are nearer they're in the middle. But at least there's enough to see that it's going to be a blotchy one rather than what I would call a spotty one, which is good news because it means it'll have more colour on it. But the blooms on this have got an awful lot of colour on the back of the blooms. But we'll wait and see. I don't know whether it'll be fragrant or not. It's the first time it's bloomed, so that's a bonus. And it's bloomed on what looks like the Cattleya version, because there's two plants in there. The other plant looks a lot stronger, but it still hasn't bloomed, you know, maybe next year, or maybe even push a spike out in the winter, I don't know. But the plant itself seems to have done better since I took it out of its bark, because these really do need a wet-dry cycle, but they are a drinker. You know, so that was my idea of putting it in the bark, was so that it could stay moist longer, but it just didn't grow any roots. And since I opened it up like this in this basket, there is root growth going on. I can't get at it at the moment because plants are in the way. But yeah, I mean, that'll be open fully probably within a week, and then we can have a good look at those. I always like first time bloomers, always a bonus. I just wanted to show this because it's a trick that I used that in this case worked. And not all little tricks work, but this one has. This came from Ecogenera back at Malvern, so that would have been whatever it was, June this year. Laelia purpurata variety Atropurpurea. Yeah, there's a lot of purpurs. But when I got it, it didn't have very good roots, but it did have a couple of little new growths on it. Well, these are the two new growths. They've pushed on well. But this growth here had a kink in it here. The leaf was starting to fold over. Now this was when the leaf was starting to get quite large, and it hadn't developed its full root system yet, so it probably was a little underhydrated. But I'd strapped it to this plant, to this leaf loosely, on the grounds that it straightened the part with the kink in it. And as you can see, it's developed its own strength now. The kink's gone. So I've successfully rescued that pseudobulb effect. You know, in effect, it's now got its own bolt upright leaf supporting itself. So yeah, a little trick sometimes. If you start, you know, if you're a little underhydrated in places with Cattleya types due to lack of roots, which we do get now and again, and you see a leaf starting to fold at the base of the pseudobulb, you know, the top of the pseudobulb where the leaf comes out, if you can strap it to something and keep it straight, it'll often recover itself and regain its strength and hold itself up, like what this one has. So yeah, so that little tie can just come off now. That's grown well. Whether these two new growths will bloom, I have no idea. But what I've got now is two strong new growths, two good leaves, and a flipping good root system down in the pot. So if these two don't bloom, the next ones should. But again, it's a wait and see. No sign of any sheaths in there yet, but yeah. It's a successful grow from Ecuagenera. There's quite a few of the Ecuagenera plants don't make it. They get stressed so badly coming across from Ecuador, transport, you know, they're all bare rooted, especially towards the end of the season. They've been like that sometimes, so they're in a state of stress when you get them to one degree or another. But this one was on my list for quite a long time, and to suddenly find it, I thought, well, I'm having it and I'll do my best with it, and seems to be a success. It's still pushing out new roots. So yeah, the front end of the plant's good. The back end of the plant is of no use whatsoever. Unfortunately, that's how it went in there, because there were signs of eyes back here that I thought might grow. So I left this piece on, but as a consequence my new growths are now practically up against the edge of the pot. There's still room for another couple of new growths before it climbs out of the pot, so it can stay where it is. I'm not disturbing it now, not now it's developed a good root system. We'll see how it goes next year. My Phalaenopsis dendrobiums were going downhill incredibly fast, but this year they pulled back, and I don't know why. I don't know what I've done different this year. Perhaps they got a bit more light, but you can see the state of the older plant. Got a lot of bug damage. Very, very poor plant, but this year it's pushed up new growths, yeah, and these new growths look good, and I do believe there's a start of a spike coming in there, so that'll be good. I might even be able to identify it once it actually does it. And the other one that was in exactly the same state, you can see the older bulbs and leaves got in a right mess, but new growths have pushed up, and that one's definitely got a spike on it. So that's actually, I have 6 Phalaenopsis type dendrobiums in my records, one of which is named with a tag, so I'm okay with that one. That leaves 5 plants in my notes with 3 plants, and now all 3 of them have got a spike. So I should be able to, in the not too distant future, find out which one's which and delete the ones that I've lost. So coming soon, but yeah, that's definitely a spike. Chances are, because the plant's recovering, these won't be good spikes this time round, but hopefully the newer canes with their root systems will encourage lots of better growths next year, which then should start producing better spikes. You know, so it literally is a year away from having a decent spike on it. But there will be, hopefully, I only need one bloom to find out which one it is. So as long as that spike has a bloom, I'll have it. But process of elimination now, they've all got spikes. So if one of them actually aborts its spike, it's not the end of the world. At least I'll have identified the others. So coming soon. I just had a look at my notes, and this Cattleya opened on the 1st of the month. It's the 26th now. As Cattleyas go, that's not bad going, because there's a fair old few 3 weeks-ish, some even less, some a lot more. So this one looks like it's got a bit of longevity in the blooms. There's no sign of these going yet, and the fragrance has changed. For the first week there really wasn't any. And then it started to develop, and it was that typical floral rose-like sort of smell. And do you know what it actually smells like now? In my book, this actually smells like freesias, which is one of my favourite memories of my other house, was growing freesias in the garden, and the fragrance in the evening from those plants was stunning. This smells like freesias. So I'm over the moon. It's not only a good size and shape, it's nice colours, and it's got a smashing fragrance. So yeah. How much longer it's going to last, I don't know, but it's heading up towards the 4-week point now, and it's showing no signs of going. But you know, some Cattleyas go very quickly when they decide to go. You know, literally 2 days they start to fade, and then they're on the floor. But we'll see how this one goes. But I am well pleased with that, especially as I didn't pay a lot of money for it. It's a massive plant though. You know, there are some Cattleyas that you it's not so much the width, it's the height. You know, I mean, that from the bottom of the pot to the top of the blooms is 2.5 feet. I was heading up towards a metre of height here. So yeah, but a smasher. Well pleased with that. I noticed the yellow has faded as time's gone on, but then the sort of magenta, deep magenta colour has developed, and also the rest of the pale colours have developed. So, you know, it's changed colours, and the fragrance has changed as well, lasting well. This Epidendrum nocturnum bud is now progressing at quite a rate, having sort of sat stationary for God knows how long, 6 months. That spike just sat there that long doing nothing, and now it's just taken off. And given the length of the bud, you know, if that bud opened now, that would be a reasonable sized bloom, and it's only just started to swell. I got a feeling that's going to be quite a large flower, but when it is, it'll be a first time bloomer, so it'll be nice to see. And I believe this is fragrant. With a name like Nocturnum, it might be night fragrant. We'll have to wait and see. But it is going to bloom now. I don't think that's going to blast. It's got too far down the road. And if that old cane can bloom, there's certainly no reason why this new one can't. And hopefully the spike on that one develops a little bit quicker than this one did, because it started and stalled. And it's just decided to go now, along with lots of new roots and a nice strong new growth. So yeah, to come soon, hopefully. Well, this is Epidendrum polybulbum, but I think it's had a name change. It's something like Dinema polybulbum, I think. But I am relatively confident, given that this has been growing well this year and putting on a lot of new growths, and each growth has a pair of leaves. And that's it. That's what it does. Little tiny pseudobulb, creeping rhizome, and a pair of leaves. Well, if you look at a lot of the pair of leaves, they've got something poking up in the middle. And there's quite a few of them at it, in various places. I think that's going to bloom. That'll be a first. It's a wait and see, but it has actually done that before, and then the bit poking up in between the two leaves just went brown and did nothing. Well, there's a lot more of them this time round. And if you look at that one, let's see if I can get it centre shot, that looks quite strong up through between those two leaves. I think that's going to bloom. And if it is, and all of the little bits sticking up are successful, it's going to have quite a few. Now, I haven't got a clue what they look like. Given the size of the plant, I expect they're tiny. I believe they're fragrant, but it's a wait and see. I haven't got a clue, never bloomed before, but it's grown on well, and it looks like it's going to bloom. Now, whether it's supposed to bloom in the winter or whether it's just reached that point with the pseudobulbs, I don't know. We shall see, but yeah, there's quite a few of the bulbs are doing it, whatever it is. Now, this is 2 out of the 3 Miltonias that came from Madeira. I won't be doing that again. They were all badly infected with Fusarium. But it's good to show a success. Those 2 older bulbs, that's all I had left. And it pushed up that nice big fat new growth, and I was over the moon. And now it's pushing up 2 more. With a good root system, a success. No question. This was the weaker one. Say the very weak one didn't even make it. And this one I was a bit worried about, because although it's pushed out a nice root system, the growth it put on is not as big as the previous one. So it was a weaker growth. So this one was still suspect. But like the other one, it has a new growth at the base on that side. And difficult to see, but there's one there as well. Let's see if I can get that back. It's in there anyway. Yeah, you can see it now. So this now has 2 new growths on top of the one it produced earlier this year and didn't quite mature properly. So I'm pretty sure that one's okay as well. I mean, that's a major success. I'm well pleased with that. There's no reason why those 2 latest growths shouldn't bloom when they mature. As for this one, it's a bit behind, but that one is, I think that's actually that's Cattleya. That's a species, I believe, and that's a hybrid Queen Anne. Lovely deep purpley colours on that one, if I ever get it to bloom. And this one I can't remember. But anyway, that's recovered. I've got no worries about that. This is still classed as recovering, but if those two new growths push on like those two are, then we've got a second recovered one as well. To say, I was a bit annoyed with that, you know. I mean, that's 3 plants, all badly infected, going downhill fast. Luckily I spotted it and treated it, and they seem to have recovered okay. Quite honestly, the more vigorous growers seem to have a lot more chance of recovering from the dreaded F than something that's a real slow grower. You know, if you get that in a Phalaenopsis, you'll be lucky to get rid of it. It's just so slow moving, single, you know, monopodial type orchid. Same with a Vanda. If you get it in that, it's ever so difficult to shift. But with things like Oncidiums, Cattleyas, you know, things that push out complete new growths out to one side with new root systems, if you can stop it in the old part of the plant, the new part should grow clean. And then at some point you can, to be safe rather than sorry, discard the old part of the plant in case there's anything still lurking in it in some sort of dormant state. Anyway, I think that's quite good. Right, that'll do for today. A good day. Literally, apart from the Masdevallias, a few of the Coelogenes and Restrepias, that lot in behind that green hedge, everything has been watered that should be. That's quite a busy day, but I needed to crack on with it while I was in the mood. All that's happening now is there's a few things just being allowed to drip before they get hung up. But just on light levels, look at the sheer amount of light there is without those huge dendrobiums up on that rack, because they're all down here dripping at the moment. Some of them aren't dripping very much because they only got a trickle, but you know, still got a few Vandas to soak. I might have to reconsider. Every time I do a big water like that, something pops up that I think I could change as an improvement. My 3 mounted Phalaenopsis are now in the house, so they're in relatively dry air and quite warm air, because Roger doesn't like being cold, you know. And I think every 2nd or 3rd day is not enough. Some of these leaves are starting to feel possibly a little bit limp, so I think I might try watering those every day. Because they're mounted, the only hydration they get is, you know, the water on the roots at the time. But if it was applied daily, I'm sure it would be more than enough. So I might tweak those. Come next year, they may well go in pots, because although I love the look of them mounted, and I've got a nice spike here that's going to arch out naturally and everything, they are a problem in the winter because they're not in a pot. They're drying out so fast. So I might have a rethink in the spring. Certainly not now, I'm not disturbing the roots now. But yeah, so a little tweak, and that'll do for today. All sorts, bits and bobs, what looks like new buds forming, this, that and the other. This makes a change, because normally there's a jungle here, and these two get hidden away a bit. But this is, I won't say it's disappointing because I love the blooms, but what is disappointing for a Zygopetalum is this one is not very fragrant. Now maybe it will be on subsequent blooms, and all 3 of these spikes are coming off of one growth, which is quite a strain on it, I would imagine. But yeah, I'll have to wait for subsequent blooms, which could be some way off. But there's very little fragrance coming off of that one, you know, compared with the other one I had. Oh, and the other thing I discovered, well, I can say it, my this one down here is Zygopetalum Louisendorf. Quite a few people have got that. But what I didn't know is that is one of the parents. Now I'm blowed if I knew that. I just happened to come across that rambling around on the internet. Yeah, so that's actually one of the parents, if it ever blooms. I mean, it's not dead yet, so that's okay. This one's growing okay as well, but yeah, so I need to get stuff hung back up and get myself sorted out here, and then that's it out here for today. Sherry baby spike pushing on nicely. This was a little worry because I think this is the yellow twinkle, But if you remember in a previous video I said there is also a miniature Oncidium lurking around here somewhere. Well, in the last week or so it started, instead of forming buds, it started chucking out lots of branches. So it still could be the yellow twinkle. It could still also be the miniature Oncidium dancing ladies type. We'll have to wait, but yeah, coming on. And my varicosum starting to show colour on the bud, so that won't be too far off opening. Vandas are still hanging in there, jolly good. They are a nuisance to water because they're so clumsy. They're so, you know, this spike on this white one is so heavy that when I pick the plant up it waggles around all over the place. I'm worried to death it's going to snap. But they're both hanging in there nicely. Nice end of season splash of colour into the winter, because they probably won't bloom now until well into spring next year. But we have them while they're going. Okay? See you next time. Thanks for dropping by. I just thought I'd tag this on the end. I've rolled that shade netting down part way. My original idea was to take it down level with the top of this shelf, but I got a feeling that's a bit too fierce for some of these plants, some of the Oncidiums and things, in direct sun for 3 or 4 hours. Yeah, a bit iffy. However, the resting dendrobiums are going to love it, but I think I might have to rig another wire from, say, there's a hook up there. If I put a dangly wire, a loose wire, across to one of those pieces of wood up there, I can bring some of these round here so that they face that glass without messing up where the vandas go. And even though it might only be 2 or 3 can go there, it's enough. Coming over here, those 3 there, they're all resting dendrobiums. They're in the corner, so they're going to get light from every which way. They've got more than enough. There's a couple here that are not resting. This one, Hercoglossum's not resting, and Harveyanum's not resting. They're just getting more light. But I've got 3 in a row there, including that big bush, which I think is Friedrichianum. I'm not getting it down. And they're all in a line, so obviously the one closest to the glass will do very well with the extra light, but the 2 behind it won't do so well. So I'll have a shuffle round and see if I can get the best light available for the resting dendrobiums. There's some over here now. The light comes in from the left hand corner, yeah, so that's why they're angled round, but they get bright sun when the sun's out, so they're okay. I'm alright with them. Cats are all in good light all the time, and they do get a bit of sun, albeit at an angle. So I think that's about the best I'm going to get for a bit. But yeah, a little bit of shuffling around, and I think I'm going to be okay. And that's never happened before. I've never taken that shade netting down like that, so that's a first. That's been up there forever, that shade netting. And yeah, every little bit helps. We'll see how it goes. The results will be in early spring.